Tonight on The Wrap, anger at Russia from NATO and the EU after a drone crashes into a Romanian apartment block, injuring 2 people. Russia denies responsibility, but the Prime Minister here condemns what he called a serious violation of NATO airspace. Deadlock still between the US and Iran after President Trump met aides about a possible deal, with Tehran playing down the chances of a settlement. 130 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. 2 men are sentenced over a fatal collision in Manchester. Novak Djokovic is sensationally knocked out of the French Open. We discuss the day's biggest stories with the investigative journalist Susie Boniface and Henry Hill, political editor of The Critic. Plus, the first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Good evening. Welcome, Susie and Henry. Now, Russia has been condemned by NATO and European leaders after a drone struck an apartment building in Romania, injuring 2 people. President Putin has demanded evidence that it was a Russian drone, but a senior Russian security official said that citizens of EU states would not be able to sleep peacefully if they aided Ukraine in its war efforts. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte called Russia's behaviour reckless. Sir Keir Starmer called it a serious violation of NATO airspace, which threatened the security of the entire continent. Russia not necessarily accepting responsibility for this drone, but are you surprised by this incursion, Susie?
No one should be surprised, because Russia's firing 1,000 drones a day at a country which is on NATO's borders. There have been incursions in other countries along that border, into Finland, into Latvia. We've had, I think, 47 drone parts have fallen in Romania since the start of the war 4 years ago. And Putin is increasingly desperate and increasingly imprudent, shall we say, in terms of what he's doing, his strategy and how he's fighting it. He's just chucking people and ballistics at Ukraine and hoping something keeps them back, because not to say the tide of the war is turning or anything like that, but it's just they are able to put up such a good fight up till now that he's just chucking stuff at it. And there's, you're going to be making a mess when that happens. The problem for Romania is they can't fire back, because that would mean firing into Ukraine's airspace. So they're sitting ducks. But fundamentally, it means that there are going to be increasing risks of an accidental, potentially fatal incursion into NATO territory, which NATO would trigger Article 5, and they will have to respond.
Henry?
I don't think anyone in NATO wants to trigger Article 5. And so it's essentially, as Susie describes, this wasn't deliberate by Russia. It sounds as if this was a kamikaze, basically an unguided munition. Russia does not have a massive stockpile of the sort of smart bombs, and so they're increasingly just bolting wings onto a conventional missile or explosive and just firing it at Ukraine. And the danger is, if you fire at those near the border, they go over the border. Now, it doesn't suit any party for this sort of thing to keep happening, because Putin really does not, when his army is on the ropes and overstretched in Ukraine, want to even risk having to fight European ground forces. But on the other hand, most European countries really don't want to get stuck into a ground war in Ukraine either.
No, indeed. Well, our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, has more now on the latest dangerous escalation in tensions between Russia and NATO.
A Russian drone hitting NATO territory. That's what Romania says happened here overnight. The drone struck this apartment block in a city close to the border with Ukraine, injuring a mother and her child, terrorising many more.
When I heard the bang, I didn't even know which way to run. I jumped out of bed and rushed to my husband because he's sick. The fright is sinking in even more now, as I realise that this disaster just passed right over us.
Romania's president clear about who's to blame.
The full responsibility for this incident lies with Russia, a country that has been waging a war of aggression against Ukraine for more than 4 years. In view of this situation, the Consul General of the Russian Federation in Constanta has been declared a persona non grata, and the Consulate General of the Russian Federation in Constanta will close.
Romania thinks the drone was most likely part of a Russian attack against Ukraine and that it accidentally strayed across the border into Romanian airspace. But Russia's President Vladimir Putin says he wants to see the evidence.
No one can say what origin a particular aircraft has until it has been examined. After all, we know that Ukrainian drones have strayed into Finnish airspace, into Polish airspace, and at some point into the airspace of the Baltic states.
The NATO alliance is putting on a united front with Romania. Britain's Prime Minister said in a post on social media, "This is a serious violation of NATO airspace. Russia's aggression against Ukraine and attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure threatens the security of our entire continent. The UK unreservedly condemns such strikes." Russian drones have entered NATO airspace multiple times since the start of the Ukraine war. The incursions have never been grave enough to trigger the alliance's collective Article 5 military response. But this is the first time civilians have been injured in a built-up area, a sign that the risk of escalation is rising. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Well, a little earlier, Romania's foreign minister spoke to Sky News to give her reaction.
We have summoned the Russian ambassador and we have been witness to their typical narratives, which is the lack of responsibility for their actions and gestures. We do need to be aware that every time we see this type of hybrid interference, it does come alongside messages from Russia, narratives that they're trying to push, but they cannot escape their responsibility. And I do mean that in diplomatic terms, but it is very important that we do understand why an international coordinated response is needed, and that's what I'm hearing from ministers of foreign affairs across the world that I've spoken with today.
So is this incursion serious enough to cross that threshold in order to activate Article 5, in your estimation?
No, I don't think so, not at the moment. I mean, Henry's right, nobody wants to do it. You'd have to... All those countries in NATO would have to be pushed to a point where they really couldn't find some creative way out of saying we need to have a war with Russia. And when you've had an accidental... You know, Ukraine has fired at a Shahed missile fired by Russia. It's gone off somewhere unexpected. A couple of people have been hurt, but nobody's been killed. It's one of those bits of accidents of war which everyone could go, this is awful, you should take more care, but, you know, you've just put a stone through the greenhouse window of the neighbour next door. That's all you've done.
Would it have changed things if lives had been lost?
I think if lives had been lost, and I think if it was potentially looked more like a form of retaliation for any kind of support for Ukraine, then you would have some issues. And I think the worry is that some of the things that the Russian Foreign Ministry have been saying today about how they will respond to this, the complaints by Romania, and maybe that, you know, anyone who supports Ukraine is a potential target in some way. That would be very dark territory if we actually went there. It's probably just, you know, invective by Moscow at this stage.
But the Polish foreign minister is saying that Russia is still dangerous regardless of whether the strike was on purpose or not.
Well, yeah, of course it is. It's a heavily armed state that's currently waging a war of annexation against one of its neighbours and would like to do it against several more. I think that we're not going to trigger Article 5 unless the Russians say they did it, right? I think as long as they're denying it, because even though, if you look at it, NATO would almost certainly win a war with Russia, like, that is just a box you don't want to open, right? Russia is a nuclear-armed state. It has a very large conventional arsenal that is quite prepared to just fire at civilians, right? So if you're living in the Baltic states, if you're living in Poland, you do not want to have even a short war against the Russian Federation going all out. Right.
And to trigger Article 5, it would have to be a deliberate attack. It would have to be. Yes. Ultimately, it would have to be something that everyone in NATO agreed on. But yes, it would have to be a deliberate attack, which meant that Romania could trigger the self-defence clause. And as long as Russia denies it, it's nobody's interest. You might get more stuff behind the scenes. You might get more help for Ukraine. You might get more deployment of, say, interceptors to Romania under the auspices of NATO. But no one is going to make a war with Russia happen
unless Russia makes it happen.
But they are sort of hinting in that direction, because you've got Mark Rutte saying that allies are ready to defend every inch of
Well, they
territory.
have to. They have to say, look, OK, someone has thrown a rock over the garden fence and it's hit the greenhouse, and if you come and do that again, we're going to come over there and we're going to give you a damn good hiding, Vlad. But you don't, so that they stop throwing the stones, fundamentally.
But they have done this before.
They've done it before, and it does keep happening, and there's only so far that words will get you, and there comes a point where everybody just gets a bit fed up of things. And the danger you have when you have a war of aggression like this, and a war where people are just flinging ballistics around fairly willy-nilly, is that mistakes happen. And things can get programmed wrong, and drone operators can be drunk or tired or whatever else might be going on, and the wrong thing can happen. And so many wars, so many wrongs in history have been caused by someone they've just done the wrong thing and gone, oh no, damn. And that could happen easily, and then you've got real problems, because if someone accidentally, for example, decides that this bit of territory is somewhere we could park a tank, just because they've misread the GPS or whatever else might be, and then that happens to be a bit of disputed territory, or someone that NATO goes, no, that is ours, and they go and bomb them because NATO's supposed to be there, and then we go, you bomb one of our lads, and then before you know it, everyone's outside the pub having a fight.
How many of the most terrible wars in European history was started by people being like, let us launch one of the most terrible wars in European history? None of them.
No, it could be just a simple mistake.
You guys have forced us to do this every time.
Well, that story features on the front of the Mirror with the headline, "A Threat to Us All." We'll have a full rundown of what's in the rest of the newspapers at hour. Now, next, Donald Trump has met aides in the Situation Room this evening to make what he called a final decision on whether to move forward with a deal to extend the ceasefire with Iran. In a lengthy social media post earlier, the president detailed the wins a deal could contain. But an Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson speaking on the phone to an Iranian news channel repeated the pattern of the past few days, playing down the progress made.
The agreement has not been finalised yet. Other points have been mentioned, like the nuclear issue. I emphasise we are focused on the end of the war at this point and are not discussing the details of the nuclear plan.
Let's bring in our US correspondent now, David Blevins. David, it does seem like Groundhog Day. Has anything at all moved the dial today, in your estimation?
That is a really tough question, because the meeting, we understand, ended about 3 or 4 hours ago, and we still don't have a readout from it. The president said this would be decision day. I think we'll believe it when we see it. It was just before 11 o'clock this morning here in Washington, so just before 4 p.m. in the UK, that he said he was going into the Situation Room to make a final determination, Gillian. But a final determination on what? Because as part of that lengthy post, he focused on 2 things. He demanded that Iran immediately reopens the Strait of Hormuz. Now, we understand they've already agreed to do that as part of this memorandum of understanding between Washington and Tehran. He also then demanded that they not only commit to never having a nuclear weapon, but to allowing the United States to deal with their enriched uranium, something they most definitely have not agreed to. In fact, this reported memorandum would only commit Iran to discussing that issue for another 60 days. And as you've just heard from the country's foreign ministry, they're negotiating how to end the war, not their nuclear programme at this stage. So in the same breath, the president is telling us he's about to make a final decision, but he's also continuing to make more demands. But this is a familiar pattern. How many times has he said, this is the deadline? And again, we're at another one of those deadline points, and we still don't have an answer.
No, indeed. Let's come back to the studio now, and Susie, we're just really no further forward at all.
No,
we've had several deadlines, we've had several judgment days, and they've come and passed.
Yeah, he does this regularly, and mainly it's to sort of provoke the markets into trying to cut the price of something, of oil, because that is causing him huge political headaches domestically. He's trying to bring the price down by tinkering with things around the edges. There's also some suggestion tonight, and here on the front of the Telegraph, that the announcement was sort of a confidence-building measure, something they were going to do ahead of actually sitting down to have some kind of formal negotiation during another 60-day truce. But seeing as the last 60-day truce was mostly invisible and nobody noticed it because everyone was so busy getting blown up all the time, you've still got the fundamental long-term goal that Trump has insisted that the nuclear remnants that were left of Tehran's weapons programme must be moved out of the country. And Tehran is very, very clear that that's not going to happen. So even if you do have that 60-day truce, even if you do have sitting down, having some kind of memorandum of understanding and some eventual peace deal, it's not going to be the one thing that everyone says is a red line. So, you know, we'll all be back to where we were 90 days ago.
Yeah, and the objectives, which were never very clear in the start, seemingly changed now. One of those to be to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which was open before the war started, and the other that Iran really promises to never, ever develop nuclear weapons.
Yeah, the problem with what Donald Trump has done here, and we were talking just a few minutes ago about, you know, wars that were started when they all looked so simple and then it turns out that they're not, is that US direct military intervention was always the very top of the escalation ladder with regards to nuclear non-proliferation. It was the big stick that nobody used, but which was therefore potentially viable. If Iran walks away from a full-on American attack with its nuclear program, that sends a signal to every other country that's thinking about developing a nuclear program that they could do it too, right? So that is an enormously... If that happens, if Donald Trump, to get out of the political problem he's created for himself with oil prices, backs out now, he will have made a much more dangerous world for everyone else and for his successors. On the other hand, it's not obvious that he has either the political will or the military strategy to force the Iranian government to give up its nuclear program, right? Because he's trying to win this war from the air, which you can't do. If you want to go in and physically seize these assets, you know, dig out all of the uranium, put troops on the ground, fine. America is big and strong enough to do that, probably. There would be a vast cost in human life, and he would definitely be very unpopular at home. But if he doesn't want to do that because his voters didn't sign up for that, because they actually signed up for an isolationist president, it's hard to think about it now, then he's got no way out. And I suspect that that's why we're just going to get this endless wheel spinning, because he can't come to a deal that delivers what he said he went into this war to do.
And David, he's in an incredibly difficult position, isn't he, the president, because he's made the nuclear weapons question the crux of his campaign against Iran. And Iran are specifically saying that that is not something that they're ever going to do. Without them doing that or agreeing to do that, he cannot claim a win, can he?
That's absolutely right. He's in an impossible situation. And I have to say, we're in a difficult situation attempting to analyse lengthy Truth Social posts, because that's how Donald Trump does business. But tonight, I think the key question is, why would you demand that Iran reopens the Strait of Hormuz if that is something they have already largely agreed to do? And why would you demand that they allow the United States to deal with their enriched uranium if you know they're not going to do that? Well, I think it's simply because he's putting a positive spin on what might ultimately be a very limited deal. If at the end of the day, the only tangible thing he can point to is the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which was, as you say, open until Donald Trump decided to go to war with Iran. This isn't going to be the easiest deal to sell, and so we continue to go around and around on this magic roundabout. On Monday, he said, we're close to a deal. On Wednesday, he said, I've told negotiators to take their time and get it right. Now, by Friday, apparently, we're close to a decision. Let's see what the weekend brings us, Gillian.
Yes. Yes. Exasperated sigh there from David. David, thank you for the moment. But Susie and Henry, I wonder if you can comment on whether you think that Donald Trump is asking for the impossible because he wants an excuse to continue the war with Iran, as he is being encouraged to by Netanyahu.
Right, no, but he wants an excuse to get out of it, because it's a war he didn't need to start. It's a war he has failed to achieve anything with. You know, the might of the American military has failed to remove a fairly low-tech regime.
But he is saying if he doesn't get what he wants now, if he doesn't get a perfect deal, that he will start bombing again.
Donald Trump says is something that I think should be removed from all news reporting forever, because it's never, ever once quite worked out. But, you know, he's they've blocked the Strait of Hormuz, which is only 20 miles across. He's in charge of the world's greatest navy. He's been unable to open the Strait of Hormuz with the world's greatest navy. So he said, well, I don't really need it anyway. Everyone else's navy should reopen it. And we've all been like, well, hang on, if your navy can't do it, what the hell chance do you think ours have got? And then he's blockaded the strait again with his own navy. And his main announcement today is he's now going to lift his blockade of the strait that he shut, that he said should be open, that he didn't want to shut in the first place. The man's a lunatic and, unfortunately, in charge of big military. But it's a big step down because he's saying, I'm going to lift my own blockade. It's now up to Iran to open the rest of it. And he cannot go back to war. So the whole idea of a peace negotiation starts from the basis of I am no longer going to fight Iran, because what could he do more than he's already done? He's already carpet-bombed the whole place and used every munition he's got.
Henry, do you agree with that he isn't looking for an excuse to restart the war?
I would echo Susie's warning that it's very dangerous to try and pretend that you know what's going on in Donald Trump's head, because he might not intend it, but he's also a very brittle, proud man who could easily make a very bad decision in a fit of pique in 2 weeks' time, and then we're back at war, and we're all going, but this is absolutely mad. And it would be mad, but it doesn't stop him doing it. I think the interesting thing about the whole American strategy in Iran was actually quite novel, which was basically just like, can you wage a sort of insurgency from the air? There was no plan to go in. There was no plan to go and restructure the install an Iranian government. It was literally, can we just make this country not work? Right, can we knock out the hospitals, the roads, the energy, the everything else, to the point where the Iranian government simply cannot function? That's not actually a way that anyone has tried to fight a war before. And it's interesting whether or not he can try and do that. And, of course, that is something that has the danger of, one, enormous human toll on the Iranian people, because you're hitting, as he threatened to do, humanitarian infrastructure at that point. It does avoid putting boots on the ground, which after the war on terror everyone is terrified of. And it's the sort of thing that you can see a proud, prickly, brittle American president sort of signing off on in the same way he did it the first time. It's just bombing, right? It's just bombing. It's not a... He doesn't understand how much that could escalate. So I think he wants an out, but I think that he recognises, at least, because the one thing that he does understand is respect and status, he recognises that this could be a humiliating defeat for him, and he's trying to find a way out, which currently doesn't exist.
Well, we're still to hear the results and have a readout from that Situation Room briefing this evening. So we might have some results this evening, possibly. We shall see. Now, on to a domestic story. 2 men have been sentenced at Manchester Crown Court following a fatal collision where the pair were recorded driving at speeds of 130 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. Let's bring in our correspondent, Amelia Harper. Amelia, remind us of the details of the case, what actually happened on the night in question.
Well, this case is interesting because this is one of the first times that we have actually seen a passenger sentenced for encouraging or assisting death by dangerous driving. And now 2 men from Manchester have been sentenced to a combined total of 24 years, over 24 years, for causing death by dangerous driving. I believe we can watch some of the footage of the crash. So 20-year-old Uzways Hussain, who was the driver, and 23-year-old Usman Mahmood, who was the passenger, had been found guilty for causing the death of 50-year-old Sylvester Abayomi. They killed Sylvester when they ran a red light in their VW Golf, a white VW Golf. And their Golf crashed, you can see the Golf there, crashed into Sylvester's Volvo when he was driving through a green light in Kingsway in Burnage in the early hours, and this was back in March. And Uwais Hussain will spend 11 years and 8 months in prison, and Usman Mahmood will spend 12 years and 9 months in prison. And the car actually belonged to Mahmood, but he actually allowed Hussain to drive it. And we can see footage here of them driving incredibly quickly. The pair filmed themselves driving consistently at well over 100 miles an hour on 30-mile-an-hour roads. And actually, seconds before the impact, they were recorded at 139 miles an hour. Also important to this case is their use of nitrous oxide. So they were seen inhaling nitrous oxide from balloons while driving. We can have a listen to this. So So we can see them there pulling up in their car, and have a look at this. This is inside a petrol station, and look at the passenger side. You can see one of the men holding a red balloon there. And after the crash, the men actually discussed fleeing the scene and removing evidence, including booking an Uber to escape the scene. And we can hear audio coming up next. And this is from the driver's Apple Watch. It actually triggered a 999 call after the collision. Let's have a listen now.
Book an Uber Rapid, get out of here.
The owner of this Apple Watch was in a serious car crash and is on.
The guy's away.
Of this Apple Watch was in Stereo 427, longitude minus
Book an Uber quick.
089.
Book an Uber, man.
Estimated search.
Are you booking an Uber or not? If anything, you just stay there. Say you were driving. No, man. That's it, man. Stolen, no. Say it was a mistake, man. Then they're going to know, they're going to lock you up straight away. Damn, God. Give me a balloon. I'm not got a balloon. Say you wrapped it. No, I'm not saying. Look to me, man. Employers will cover you and everything. No. What are you going to do? They're going to me, man.
I think what was striking listening to that was hearing them ask if they needed a balloon after everything that had happened. But this is a police reconstruction of the night, and you can see the Volvo there in a complete wreckage. Ultimately, Uwais Hussein will spend over 11 years in prison. Usman Mahmoud will spend over 12 years in prison now. And this case is important because it is one of the first times that a passenger has been jailed for encouraging death by dangerous driving, Gillian.
Amelia, thank you very much for taking us through all of that. I mean, just shocking case and the fact that a perfectly innocent bystander has lost his life. Sylvester Abayomi killed on his way home from work, and the fact that the perpetrators were high on drugs.
Yeah, I mean, it's of all the things to be taking when you're driving, balloons is just an extraordinary... Because do you know how they work? Basically, it allows you to breathe because you don't realise that you're not getting any oxygen, and so you basically get a kind of hypoxic high. And it's not, you know, cocaine or something else like that, at least, is when I first heard that they would be taking drugs. I was like, OK, it'll be stimulant, because stimulants reduce your risk appetite, right? Or no, increase your risk appetite. They make you more reckless, they make you more aggressive. It's just an absolutely insane thing for anyone to be doing while driving. And I think the one good thing about this is that the criminal sentence reflects the severity of what they've done, right? Because when you get behind the wheel of a car, you are driving a deadly weapon, potentially what is a deadly weapon, and you have a responsibility to take that responsibility seriously and to drive safely. And what these people did was murdered this person, more or less, like manslaughter. And it's good that it's not been, you know, oh, it's a driving offence, oh, da-da-da-da. No, they've got proper criminal sentences, and that's what they deserve.
And interestingly, actually, the Mahmoud, who was convicted for aiding and abetting, his sentence was actually longer than the driver, because he got 12 years. Well, the driver got 11 years and 8 months. He got 12 years and 9 months.
Yeah, well, that one's up to the judge, but obviously it was his car, and there was obviously probably some aggravating circumstances around who was encouraging whom to do what inside the car and afterwards and everything else. But I think, in fact, it's almost ridiculous how stupid these people were. The first thing, they would behave in this way, driving 140 miles an hour nearly through city streets where there is traffic, where there are lorries that slowly turn across your way and all the rest of it. There's, never mind the traffic, there's signs and junctions and corners and stuff at 140 miles an hour that you just can't take. And then there's the fact that they thought they weren't going to get caught on cameras doing this in a car they own, and that when there has been a terrible fatal accident, the first thing they're going to do is book an Uber, so there's actually a trace of their bank card at the scene where they're going to insist that the car was stolen, and their own Apple Watch is the one that's called the police and actually managed to incriminate themselves. I mean, if there's any positives in this at all, it's the fact that the people responsible are this thick. They're always going to get caught. But how is it that people that thick and people who are prepared to behave that way, had the car and were able to drive in the first place. I mean, how can anyone be in that position and have always been a safe driver previously? What was the past driving history of those people? What was the past insurance history of those people? Because I have to question how you've got to the place where you're doing nitrous oxide at 140 miles an hour.
Well, actually,
if you were previously a perfectly good driver.
Hussein was a law student and he had a previous conviction for drug driving.
Right,
So,
yeah. There should be, once you get a conviction for something like that, you don't get to go back on the road again. It's, you know.
OK, thank you both. Very disturbing case, but let's take a break now. And we'll take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers when we come back. Do stay with us.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
You are watching The Wrap. Time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Well, the Mirror goes with the headline, "A threat to all of us," after a stray Russian drone flew into flats in Romania. The FT focuses on the potential deal between the US and Iran after President Trump said he was making a final determination on an agreement. The Telegraph says Donald Trump has announced he'll lift the blockade on Iranian shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. The Front of the Eye reports on polling suggesting a Labour Party led by Andy Burnham at the next general election would still struggle to beat reform. The Front of the Times says poor sleep is linked to a rise in women's cancer cases. The Guardian reports that millions of women with breast cancer could be spared chemotherapy thanks to the development of a new test. The Daily Mail leads with the anger over the failure of a retrial for two men accused of attacking a police officer at Manchester Airport. The Express reports on the prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, Christian B. And The Star features the helicopter pilot who airlifted seven-time Formula One champion Michael Schumacher after his horrific ski crash. So let's go through some of the papers, starting with the Mirror. Susie, you take us into this story, and this is Sir Keir Starmer commenting on those we believe, Russian drones, the incursion into Romania overnight.
Yep, Keir says that Russia's aggression against Ukraine and attacks on civilians threatens the security of our entire continent, and if you've managed to get through that while still being awake, then that's why he's under some kind of threat from his own sort of party leadership splits.
But it's valid.
It is a valid, of course, it's a valid point. He's just the communication and the delivery is so deadpan and so, well, of course it is a threat to all of us. This is not terribly. Say something else, say something that's meaningful, that actually impassions people with what you need them to be doing at this point, which is, you know, war is coming our way, or we'll be fine, or whatever it might be, I don't know. But it's typical deadpan Keir going, this is very bad news, isn't it? Everything's going to get worse before it gets better, just like it was on day one in Downing Street. And you go, thanks, Keir.
To be fair, he hasn't said much differently to other world leaders that have commented on this. I mean, they've more or less said exactly the same thing.
They have, and that is sort of an indictment of all of them, because a lot of them are in this. Well, a lot of them are in the same boat, right? Essentially, you've got Europe. You can just chart it as a sort of heat graph, right? Where close to Russia, you have well-armed countries with proper defence budgets, which are really not keen on actually fighting. And then the further you get from Russia, the smaller the defence budgets get and the less ready to fight everyone is. But the more bellicose all the rhetoric is about how we're going to defend Europe and all the rest of it with our 9 to 5, 5 days a week armed forces of 20 people and a broom. This government, in particular, has literally said the words, I think, we're putting Britain on a war footing. And then it's announced that it's not going to be giving the Ministry of Defence any new money in until 2029 and asked the department to find £3 billion of additional savings. So it is fair, I think. Yes, the words are nice. It's much better to have that than the alternative, which would be some version of Starmer that's like, actually, I think Putin has a point. But that's a really low bar to clear. And he's not actually backing this up with anything, right? If we are in a dangerous world where countries like Russia, Russia is poor, right? No disputing that. It's got a GDP the size of Spain, all true. But it spends 7% of GDP on defence, and it's prepared to kill people and it's prepared to take casualties. And that's something that you have to take more seriously than we are.
And the other European leaders.
And other European leaders, right? We can't just leave it to, Poland got 5 divisions. Investing in more, right? Understandably. The Baltic countries, to the extent that they can, they're arming up. But if there's going to be a pan-European defence, it's going to be Britain, France and Germany that have to make that work. And we've got between us one functional military between those 3 countries, and that's not enough.
And also, we've been having promises to have a defence investment plan, the means by which we're going to find the cash to plough into our armed forces to make it fit for the next 10, 15 years of plainly some crap that's coming our way. And the decisions apparently are just stopped in Downing Street, and there are no decisions whatsoever coming through about where that money's coming from, how it's going to be hitting those targets, even though it is going to be late, how we're going to get there and who's going to be finding the money and where it's going to be coming from. It's been up in the air for 2 years.
I'm going to apologise for your language on your behalf. And we shall move swiftly on to the Eye. This is a new poll which is suggesting that Andy Burnham would face a battle to beat Nigel Farage in the general election. This is new polling. Labour under Burnham would win 20% of votes at the next election, 2 points more than under Starmer, but still 3 behind Reform. This is according to an Eye poll.
Yeah, so I think where Susie earlier said that she would ban saying Trump says from journalism, I would ban polling. Because basically this is voodoo. Taking nothing away from the pollsters, who I'm sure have done an excellent job, but the amount of... It's important, actually, when we're discussing this, because politicians do make decisions based on polls like this. The amount of variables that you can't really control for here. So basically, what the pollster has done is they said, OK, imagine it's the next election. How would you vote if Sir Keir Starmer was still Prime Minister? And people have answered. And then they're like, oh, but what if Andy Burnham's Prime Minister? And then they've been like, oh, I like Andy Burnham a bit more than Sir Keir Starmer, and so I'm going to vote more Labour. But we don't know what Burnham's going to be like. But Burnham, when he comes in, is going to have exactly the same in trade as Sir Keir Starmer. If he comes in...
I thought you knew something that we didn't.
I mean, no, sadly, if anything, I put my money on a Miliband, so I really am gutted on that one. If he comes in, he's going to have exactly the same interest as Sir Keir Starmer, right? As mayor, he has not had to deal with immigration, he's not had to deal with taxation, he's not had to deal with welfare, social care, the NHS, like any of the things that make prime ministers unpopular. And so parties are going to genuinely make decisions based on this because politicians take polling incredibly seriously. But all this really tells us is that Andy Burnham, the genial mayor from Manchester, is more popular than the robotic Prime Minister who is like the least popular Prime Minister since records began.
Although the poll's also saying Labour supporters appear less keen to oust Starmer, with those wanting him replaced falling 5 points to 37%.
And while support for him staying rose 2 points to 48%. What happened to the other 3% of people who now can't decide whether they want Starmer there or not? And is that what's happened in the past week? What has it been that suddenly he's got more support? Is it just because Tony Blair's come out and said, well, I don't like Keir Starmer, in which case some of the people go, well, fine, he's all right, anything but Tony Blair. But the fact is that I just think this is kind of thing is hogwash. I mean, we don't have the methodology or the details of the polling that's inside the paper, so making some assumptions here. But previous polling has suggested that Burnham would beat Farage by some margin. And these kind of surveys, I don't know if this is a sustained change, it might be, but previous polling, you know, this kind of thing, it can be affected a lot by what order you ask the question in and who you ask the questions of. What we don't know is how well the survey was done, for example. So what they tend to do, because women tend to answer these surveys more than men, they will weight the results to change some of the results to assume if more men had answered, this would have been the result that we would have got. Because the two men who did answer said this, so we'll assume that if it was 50% men, this would be the result. And it might not be the case. Plus, of course, Andy Burnham hasn't, as far as we know yet, has not taken £5 billion from a Thai-based crypto billionaire and is facing a standards investigation.
£5 billion?
5 million. Sorry. £5 million from a Thai-based crypto billionaire and facing a standards investigation, which, if it gets to more than a 10-day suspension from the Commons, could see a recall by-election in Clacton, which will mean a whole more summer of fun while Andy Burnham is riding south.
On the point of Farage, the majority of voters, 60%, believe that he should have declared that £5 million gift that he received.
Of course, that's the point. If 60% think he should have declared a £5 million gift, then, OK, if you'd asked the question after that, do you think that man should be Prime Minister? Would you rather vote for him or Andy Burnham, you know, the genial supply teacher who doesn't mind if you smoke a roll-up in the back of the class? It would be like, no, of course not. I'm going to be voting for Mr Burnham.
Yeah, it very much does depend on how and the questions are asked and what questions are asked. I've just got quickly time to talk about the Telegraph story, and this is Nicola Sturgeon suggesting that she's also a victim of her estranged husband Murrell's fraud, and she obviously didn't know the person that she was married to. What are your thoughts on her defence, Henry?
My thoughts are that she has been investigated and cleared by a court of law and the police. It's important to note this.
She's not been cleared by a court.
Well, yeah, by the police.
But she was arrested and released without charge.
Criminally investigated.
It is a fascinating portrait of a marriage, shall we say, that there have been two scandals at the top of the SNP. This is the financial one, and then before that, there was the one about the way that it treated Alex Salmond. And that also ended up in court, and that ended up with Alex Salmond winning that court case.
Yeah.
And in both of those cases, Peter Murrell was the chief executive of the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon was the First Minister of Scotland and the leader of the SNP. They were like the most powerful, they had the two most powerful positions in an incredibly centralised party. And in both cases, Nicola Sturgeon has stood up the defence that they had these impenetrable Chinese walls, that literally Alex Salmond would come to a meeting about SNP business in the Murrells' house, but it would not be communicated to her, as it was not appropriate for that to be communicated to the leader of the party because it was a chief executive question. And I think that that is remarkable, if that is genuinely how that whole arrangement worked, and that is all I will say on that.
Yeah, just very quickly, because we've only got a few minutes left on this, but she did say today that Alex Salmond had advised her that it wasn't appropriate for him to have that post and for her to be the leader of the party.
Yeah, I think the two of them together in that party is obviously going to cause some kind of problems. You either got to have those kind of Chinese walls or you're going to have far too much information going across the two. But we do all know politicians are rampant egotists who think mostly about themselves, so maybe you're not noticing the stuff that's happening in your home. And I think we all know a marriage where one party turns around and goes, I'm living a completely double life, there's something else going on that no one else knew about, and then the remaining spouse goes, what? And it's a surprise. I'm 50-50 as to where we are with Sturgeon, but I'll give her the benefit of the doubt.
OK, right, we're going to move to sport now. Arsenal are hoping to make it a double for them and a clean sweep of European trophies for English teams as they prepare for the Champions League final in Budapest tomorrow. Mikel Arteta's team have already secured the Premier League title and have the chance to win their first ever Champions League victory, facing off against last year's winners and the bookies' favourites, Paris Saint-Germain. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris is in Hungary and sent this report.
This could be their greatest week as Arsenal fans. The greatest ever for the club. The chance to be champions at the double. If they can win this for the first time in Budapest, the biggest prize of them all, the Champions League.
We know what we'll be.
They've already ended the 22-year wait to win the Premier League again.
Pretty much for my whole life of being cognizant and following Arsenal, we've been rubbish, and now we have an amazing chance to prove we're the best team in Europe.
But Paris Saint-Germain stand in the way of that for Mikel Arteta's side.
Arteta's changed everything about this club. He's made us into a team that people are scared to play against.
It's taken Arsenal 20 years to return to this stage, to be in a Champions League final again. And few know what it means to the club, having endured all the struggles, than a player who's been in the academy since the age of 7, Bukayo Saka.
Loving this club and seeing the ups, seeing the downs, winning the Premier League and obviously being able to play in this final. It's been a long journey, some disappointments along the way, but it's been worth it.
This final at Puskás Arena will be a clash of styles. The holders, PSG, like to retain the ball while attacking dynamically. The Gunners often rely on set pieces and physicality, but are tough to score against.
Winning the Premier League, which is probably the toughest league to win in the world, gives us a lot of confidence, playing a good team with a lot of qualities, but we have full belief in ourselves, what we can do.
Lifting the European Cup wouldn't just crown Arsenal's best season. After Aston Villa won the Europa League and Crystal Palace claimed the Conference League, a clean sweep of men's European trophies would be a first for England and a treble no country has ever achieved before. They take that result here. Rob Harris, Sky News, Budapest.
Oh, there's a lot riding on this, isn't there? There's a lot riding on this. Mikel Arteta says, we have one, now we want a second.
You're actually asking me about this? I've got no idea. I mean, I'm good luck to them. I've got no idea what any of these trophies are. I don't know who any of those people are. I'm really sorry.
Right.
Like, sport is the one thing.
But would you like them to win?
Yeah.
OK.
But, I mean, they're playing a non-British team,
they just won one.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Paris Saint-Germain.
I support any British team against any other team. I think that's a good basic patriotic principle to have.
OK.
Well, it's the French, isn't it? Stuff. No, but they've just won something. So, I mean, you know, why be greedy?
Socialism.
You've got to have two.
Why be greedy?
Yeah, and, you know,
But then it would be a clean
This is the
Paris Saint-Germain's better than
must
them.
have prizes mindset, right? Like, no, if they're the best, they should have all the trophies.
It's just having a shiny thing for running up and down a field, kicking a football about. And it's just...
Oh, dear. Got the wrong two in tonight, haven't we?
Now I'm pro-sport. Let's do
If it was rugby, I'd be more interested, but unfortunately I'm not, because it's a bunch of overpaid millionaires running up and down, whining and falling over, going, oh, I've hurt my knee.
Yeah, I do want them to win. Good luck. Good luck, Arsenal.
Turning a positive story
Win all the trophies.
A different... OK, thank you very much, both. Coming up, after 3 seasons on Tyneside, Anthony Gordon has completed his move to Spanish giants Barcelona.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News. We located footage of the airdrop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. Now, this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references?
Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Time now to get all the very latest sports news with Paul.
We're here at Silverstone to see if Alpine's Franco Colapinto can pick which of these 5 drivers is the real professional.
So the idea is we're going to do hot laps and then we're going to have a race.
Is it karting drivers or like
professional driver?
Professional driver, not karting.
No, not karting.
Can you show me their faces?
It's a mixture of ages.
Okay.
No, I can't show you their faces because you might recognise one of them.
Green flag, green flag.
Vamos!
Does he go wet or is slicks?
I think they're
slicks.
I think
Oh
they're
my god.
Right.
Slicks in the wet. That's proper English, huh?
That's how we do it at Silverstone.
Actually, really good lines, eh? It's quite tricky with the slicks on the wet or what?
So what do we think of him or her?
Oh, we got girls?
Yes, we have girls.
Okay, we got that mix. Hit the curve? No curve. Oh, a bit wide. Hit the curve, come on.
I mean, actually, I don't think you need this right now. You can just talk.
No, this is quite cool, eh?
I got
Oh, a bit of oversteer. The Alpine is better than that. Oh, sliding.
Right, so what do we make of this one so far? Driver number one, what do we think?
Nah, he's not a pro. The pro would be like this on the straight. I would.
What do we make of the second?
Oh, this guy. He tuck in, eh?
Oh, okay.
You see, he did what the coach said. He's got some nice boots.
Yeah?
The boots are they given by the track? No.
Yeah?
They are personal.
Yeah, well, that could be a giveaway, couldn't it?
Police. Police. Oh, the body! He's gonna fall off the cart.
Using his
He's using all the
physical
track.
ballast.
He's using the outside of the track.
Okay.
It's very slippery in the rubber.
So
Good, I like him.
potentially the pro.
Look! Okay, vamos!
Oh.
He has extra time.
It was a bit of peacocking then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A little bit of showboating.
No, he loves it.
Yeah.
He's probably racing in go-kart.
Yeah, okay.
They got pressure, right? They got cameras on them.
Yeah, he's got you commentating.
For them, yeah. Whoa.
What do you think? What do you think?
He's really, he carried a lot of speed there.
Well, the heat wave's over.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
The historic hot spell comes to an end as temperatures drop back to normal over the weekend and wetter weather moves in from the west. For most, it's a dry and mild start to Saturday with some early fog patches. Thicker cloud will have moved into Western Ireland and northwest Scotland, bringing outbreaks of rain. Cloudy skies and spells of showery rain will move eastwards across Ireland, Northern Ireland and Scotland on Saturday, where it will also be cooler and breezier. But it remains dry and sunny for England and Wales, and very warm too. Brighter skies will follow for Ireland through the afternoon, along with some heavy and possibly thundery showers.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Coming up, we'll have more on how the war in Ukraine has spilled into Romania. Stay with us.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Tonight on The Wrap, anger at Russia from NATO and the EU after a drone crashes into a Romanian apartment block, injuring 2 people. Russia denies responsibility, but the Prime Minister here condemns what he called a serious violation of NATO airspace. Also tonight, a landmark investigation by Sky News exposing what it's really like to give birth in the UK today.
We walked in and he'd be lying in pools of sick, and we had excuses such as, well, how do you expect us to see him? He's in an incubator.
A man who sold toxic chemicals online to people who use them to take their own lives, including in Britain, pleads guilty in Canada to aiding 14 suicides. Novak Djokovic is sensationally knocked out of the French Open. We discussed today's biggest stories with the investigative journalist Susie Boniface and Henry Hill, political editor of The Critic. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Good evening. Russia has been condemned by NATO and European leaders after a drone struck an apartment building in Romania, injuring 2 people. President Putin has demanded evidence that it was a Russian drone, but a senior Russian security official said that citizens of EU states would not be able to sleep peacefully if they aided Ukraine in its war efforts. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte called Russia's behaviour reckless. Sir Keir Starmer called it a serious violation of NATO airspace, which threatened the security of the entire continent. Do you agree with that analysis, Henry?
It's certainly deeply unfortunate, as far as we know, which is that an unguided Russian munition effectively went into the wrong place, where fortunately nobody was killed. Does it imperil the security of the European continent? Not immediately, because neither side, neither Russia, no matter what it says when it's had a few, or Western Europe want to have an Article 5 war between Europe and the Russian Federation. And so as long as Russia gives an off-ramp, that off-ramp will be taken. And in this case, Russia is denying responsibility. It would be different if Russia were to just stand up and say, yeah, we did that. We just bombed some Romanian civilians. What are you going to do about it? That would leave very little room for manoeuvre. Russia has not been that stupid.
Susie?
Well, even if, you know, Putin does get the evidence that he asked for, and they do manage to confirm this was a Shahed drone, which came from a Russian position, it would still be an accident, something that wasn't intentionally fired at Romania. It's something that the Ukrainian defences fired it, altered the trajectory, and it's landed. And unfortunately, some people have been hurt. No one's died. It wasn't done intentionally, so I think there's always going to be an off-ramp in that. But, you know, there are greater risks to European security, such as not properly funding the armed forces, not properly announcing your defence investment plan, which you said you were going to have maybe 18 months, 2 years ago. We still haven't seen. And the explanation of how you're going to be funding all the growth in the armed forces, which, you know, as a Prime Minister has predicted he's going to do. And that hasn't come along either.
Well, let's turn now to our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, who's got more on the latest dangerous escalation in tensions between Russia and NATO.
A Russian drone hitting NATO territory. That's what Romania says happened here overnight. The drone struck this apartment block in a city close to the border with Ukraine, injuring a mother and her child, terrorising many more.
When I heard the bang, I didn't even know which way to run. I jumped out of bed and rushed to my husband because he's sick. The fright is sinking in even more now, as I realise that this disaster just passed right over us.
Romania's president clear about who's to blame.
The full responsibility for this incident lies with Russia, a country that has been waging a war of aggression against Ukraine for more than 4 years. In view of this situation, the Consul General of the Russian Federation in Constanta has been declared a persona non grata, and the Consulate General of the Russian Federation in Constanta will close.
Romania thinks the drone was most likely part of a Russian attack against Ukraine and that it accidentally strayed across the border into Romanian airspace. But Russia's President Vladimir Putin says he wants to see the evidence.
No one can say what origin a particular aircraft has until it has been examined. After all, we know that Ukrainian drones have strayed into Finnish airspace, into Polish airspace, and at some point into the airspace of the Baltic states.
The NATO alliance is putting on a united front with Romania. Britain's Prime Minister said in a post on social media, "This is a serious violation of NATO airspace. Russia's aggression against Ukraine and attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure threatens the security of our entire continent. The UK unreservedly condemns such strikes." Russian drones have entered NATO airspace multiple times since the start of the Ukraine war. The incursions have never been grave enough to trigger the alliance's collective Article 5 military response. But this is the first time civilians have been injured in a built-up area, a sign that the risk of escalation is rising. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Well, earlier we spoke to the former US ambassador to NATO and Donald Trump's former special representative to Ukraine, Kurt Volker.
The first thing that everyone ought to be saying is that Russia has no business flying drones and missiles in this area at all. Whether it is an attack on Romania that's deliberate or inadvertent, it doesn't matter. They should not be doing this. This is an attack on Ukraine, an attack on civilians, an attack on infrastructure. They should not be there.
Well, everyone's established that they shouldn't be doing it and they shouldn't be there. But the point is that they haven't accepted responsibility, which means that there's not any chance of Article 5 being invoked, is there? No,
no. And I think even, as Susie was saying, like, unless this was a deliberate attack, which there's no evidence that it was, right? It appears to be that it was a munition that was fired at a Ukrainian position. So Article 5 wouldn't be triggered. And the other reason that Article 5 wouldn't be triggered is because absolutely nobody is ready for Article 5 being triggered. And it's really important to stress this because the West, particularly America, but also much of Western Europe, including Britain, have already used up most of their strategic stockpiles of the really sort of top-end munitions that we normally use to win fights. America's already been having to draw down those stockpiles because it threw an awful lot of them at Iran recently, which has put even more strain on supplies. And Russia still has a huge, unmobilized military force, right, because of the way that the Russians have framed the war in Ukraine. Their full domestic mobilization is not legally in Russian law allowed to be deployed there. So there are an awful lot of Russian troops which Putin can't, without formally declaring war under the Russian constitution, send into Ukraine, but are still there to fight NATO in the event that we decided to have a drop-down, drag-out brawl with a nuclear-armed power, which absolutely nobody wants to do. So I think that realistically, the odds of an Article 5 thing being deliberately invoked now are incredibly low. The dangerous thing is, how many wars are there where the first chapter of the history book has the word incident in the title, right? Like, it's incredibly easy for something like this, tit for tat, and all of a sudden you're on a ladder that you can't get off. It's an incredibly dangerous situation overall. No risk of an immediate Article 5.
But NATO is nonetheless sending a warning, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's the same sort of warning and don't do that they've done for the last 4 years with various bits of munitions dropping in places they shouldn't have been. But the fact is that if this is the first time in 4 years anybody has been inadvertently injured, it's incredible. After a 4-year brutal, bloody, meaty, wasted war, only a couple of innocent bystanders in another country have, had some mild injuries. I think that's astonishing. And the fact is, as Henry was saying, if you have an incident and, if a drone got knocked off its trajectory, as in this case, by some defences and it ended up on, the President's Palace, or onto a military installation, or onto a great big oil refinery, or a nuclear power station, then you've got some really big, hairy problems to worry about. And it's those kind of accidents which lead to all the biggest, nastiest mess-ups in history. And that's the real risk of what Putin is doing in Ukraine. He is not able to call it a war, as Henry was saying. He is not able to win, because Ukraine has been doing so well, and he is not able to just give up and go home. So therefore, he's just throwing around munitions and throwing bodies at it and hoping that someone eventually gives up. And it's just going to carry on until, whenever.
But it is highly likely that there might be some sort of mishap or accident, as you describe, because in the case of Romania, this is several, you know, there have been several instances of drones making incursions into their airspace.
There have. I think the thing to remember, though, is that the countries closest to Russia have the most lived experience of what it's like having Russian troops crawling all over you. They have by far the best financed militaries in the European Union, and they tend to be the least enthusiastic about being gung-ho with Article 5, right? Because realistically, they are the people who would bear most of the brunt and who would do most of the dying. If there was a war tomorrow between the European Union somehow and Russia, the European bodies would be Poles, Romanians, people from the Baltics. It wouldn't be British or French, really. So they don't want an Article 5 response. I think what they want is a credible NATO deterrent. And I think that is what is lacking at the moment. Because
what would that be?
A Western Europe that invested enough in a credible continental defence. Because what Vladimir Putin does knows two things, right? The first is that despite the fact that Russia is not a particularly well-developed country, it is functionally a dictatorship where he can spend an awful lot of its fairly limited budget on weapons. And two, that he simply has a higher stomach for casualties than a lot of other countries. And that matters when it comes to, are you prepared to use force? Are you prepared to sort of risk human life to secure your objectives? So why did he feel emboldened to launch his full war in Ukraine in 22? Because he invaded it in 2014 and nothing was done, right? And I think that what the other Eastern European countries want is they want to know that if it did come to a full Article 5, that there would be German, French, British divisions ready to go, which there are not currently.
OK. Let us move on to a major investigation now that we've done, exposing what it's really like to give birth in the UK today. Over the last few months, hundreds of mothers, fathers, partners, midwives and doctors have contacted us with stories of joy, exhaustion, neglect, grief and survival. We've also monitored hundreds of thousands of posts online about maternity, revealing the greatest concerns of those going through the system. Together, they paint a picture of maternity services struggling under strain, with families not being listened to and staff at breaking point. Let's hear some of the stories.
We walked in and he'd be lying in pools of sick, and we had excuses such as, well, how do you expect us to see him? He's in an incubator. Well, I expect you to go over and monitor and observe my child. Like, is that too much to ask? ECG cables, they'd be disconnected. The alarms would all be turned off. And it was like, oh yeah, but they're annoying. They're going off all the time. That NICU is the nursery. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I was bullied as a child, and it was that feeling when I walked in.
People's birthing conditions are also midwives' working conditions. If my workplace is hectic, under-resourced, psychologically unsafe, stressed, then of course your birthing conditions are also going to feel stressed, unsafe, tense.
Here's our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire with more on what we found.
This is the interactive version of our investigation, which you can find on the Sky News app, on the Sky News website, and you can delve really as deep as you want to go, because there's so many stories here, people who've spoken to us, parents and NHS staff. Everyone has got a tale to tell, and some of those tales are really quite harrowing. They paint a picture of a service in crisis, really. And as you go through this, you know, you'll see the text, but every so often you'll see these highlighted bits pop up. So talking about fewer babies here, you click on that and you'll get a bit of information, a bit of data here about the number of births that have actually been falling in each part of the UK since about 2010. So presumably that would mean less demand, but actually that's not really what we're seeing when it comes to people's experiences. So keep on scrolling. You'll meet people like Cheryl, who nearly died during childbirth. That is her story. And again, you go and click on this death, that's her story, and you'll see it's something that is a lot of people's story. And you'll find, you know, this is the data here. It's actually a pretty shocking statistic, this story in itself. The UK maternal mortality rate was higher in 2020 than 1985. So over that time period, you become more likely to die during childbirth. Thankfully, the odds of that are still very, very low. But actually, if you look here, the United Kingdom and Europe, there used to be a huge difference. Actually, the European rate is a lot less than the United Kingdom now. That's just one of those sort of data stories that is buried in there. You go through all of this, story of Mali, who says medical negligence caused his daughter to suffer catastrophic injuries. We've also spoken to frontline staff as well. And again, these are all the social media posts. So as well as these stories, as well as the data from hospitals, we've gone out to try and understand the conversation around this. Nearly 400,000 social media posts. We pulled together the themes that people are talking about. And this is the big headline page. 21% of posts actually had a mostly positive tone. You get comments like this: I found the service to be brilliant. I had a really positive experience with my NHS trust. More than double that, 47% were mostly negative. So you go through that, and then you can divide it into which aspect of the maternity experience you want to focus on, whether that's pregnancy, giving birth, birth teams, post-birth. Go and click on giving birth here, and we'll go through that. On the basis that more C-sections have been happening, that's putting more strains on hospital, as we've been finding out. You go into this, though, and again, we're back into a story, Megan McLaughlin's story. She was labouring in the antenatal unit, and the birth for her caused a 3rd-degree tear. That is a growing problem. And actually, you go click on that data again, you can see how much of a bigger problem it's become. So, again, these are still fairly low, but the risk has grown 25% in 5 years. There is lots of this stuff, all on that interactive. You can go as deep as you like on that. And mostly here, these stories that people have been so incredibly brave and so incredibly generous to share with us. I think for a long time, there wasn't a lot of discussion. But if you want to go and look at those stories, go to the Sky News app, the Sky News website. It is all there.
Well, certainly from our findings and all of the women that we've spoken to, it does point to a service in crisis. Henry?
Yeah, and actually a friend of mine lost a child on an NHS maternity ward and set up a campaigning charity a couple of years ago. So her story is probably in there somewhere if I thought to look for it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I think the useful thing about projects like this is it's really easy when you're in political analysis and so on, and you're at the centre and you're talking about, oh, you know, this service is failing, right? And you've got some charts, and the charts are going down. And you don't... Sometimes you can lose track of the fact that that chart represents a vast amount of human misery, right, and needless suffering. And what seems to be really good about this project is that actually you do get the headline data that shows you all of the trends, but then you can drive down and you go, oh, no, that means that this woman was ignored by staff and suffered a needless medical complication, and this child who could have survived died. And that's the kind of thing that you need to really, I think, put the wind up policymakers. And again, this is just one more thing that you'd think would be near the top of a government's agenda when given that it's something that's so important and so emotively powerful. And yet there are just so many red lights on the British dashboard now that this is just another one. And that is a really bleak statement about where we are. And
it affects so many people. I mean, I myself, with my first child, nearly died in childbirth, and there were complications with my 3rd child, which were brought on by a nurse sending me home when I shouldn't have gone home at all. I mean, Susie, what's been your experience?
Oh, well, I think, like lots of people, childbirth is not nice. Anyone who says to you, you can have a lovely, wonderful experience and skip home and it'll all be nice and you have a lovely little baby, it's rubbish. It is a physically traumatic experience. And I think what a lot of people don't appreciate is that just about every woman who goes into it is scared and is going to start from a position of being scared. And if you've had a previously bad experience or a friend has, it's going to make it so much worse. But then you've got this situation where the midwives are under-resourced. They don't have the right attitude sometimes, the right time, the right way to do things. I was treated badly. There were accidents in my care. Certainly didn't want to do it a second time. It was traumatic and traumatising. But I genuinely think, Henry, if this was happening to men, there wouldn't be a Sky News and data investigation, because it would already be everywhere. You know, we've had a huge amount of newsprint spent this week on the failure of the government to have a prostate screening programme, which is a screening to check if there is something wrong with men which may cause them to die. But it's very treatable, and the reason we don't have the screening programme is sometimes you can have false positives and all the rest of it. But if men were going through something in which they were physically being torn by Mother Nature, if they were having the kind of traumas that we're seeing here against these women, it would be right up there at the top of every editor's agenda. It'd be right up there at the top of every politician's agenda.
The male suicide rate isn't, right? Like, I'm sorry, and like the female breast cancer also gets an awful lot of coverage. Like, I just don't really see the need to frame it in that way, right? I don't think
50% of the population, 50% of voters, are likely to have an experience which is not just potentially deadly, like a cancer or another problem or a suicide, but so traumatising that there are massive impacts on their family, on their life, on their future well-being and on their children. And it's not something that our politicians discuss in great detail. It's not something that editors go, we must get that on the front page this week. And well done, Sky, for doing all this. But it's the subject of an occasional in-depth data investigation, which, with the greatest of respect, next week there'll be something else in the news. And it will just get... that'll be that. It's not the most important thing for the NHS to be worrying about.
But do you understand what Henry's saying about framing it? It's not a competition.
No, I know it's not a competition. I'm just... and obviously, men don't have babies, and that's that. But I just think that there should be more consideration for something that one half of the population alone has to experience. Obviously, there are men involved in your investigation as well. There are fathers who saw some of this and were part of it, but they're not the ones being torn in two, and they're not the ones being treated invasively sometimes. So I just think it's something
They are still losing children, though, right?
Yeah, yeah, but they're not physically suffering as a result of losing their children.
But
they're not incontinent after having had a bad birth.
No, but they are suffering now. I mean, one of the parents in our piece, one of the fathers, speaking about actual loss of a child. So, yeah, I think we have to balance that women suffer and men
are stressed by it, totally, but they're not physically impacted.
Bereaved.
A little bit more than stressed. Well, anyway, next week we'll have a special programme on the state of maternity care in the UK. Sarah Jane Mee will spend 2 days in Coventry Hospital and will present the UK Tonight live from there on Wednesday evening, speaking to families, expectant mothers, midwives and other NHS staff to hear firsthand what it's like to give birth in this country. That's on Wednesday at 8 p.m. A Canadian man has pleaded guilty to aiding suicide in deaths linked to the online sale of lethal substances. Kenneth Law admitted 14 charges relating to Canadian victims. Authorities say Law also sent packages of poison to recipients in 41 countries, including the UK. Sky's Molly Malone has more.
You might not have heard of him, but this is a man who sold packages of poison around the world to assist people's suicides. Lethal substances sold online from Canada, which authorities here believe claimed the lives of 79 people in the UK. This is Kenneth Law. Operating from Canada, he sold 330 packages overseas to the UK to 286 individuals. 79 people died. It's believed their deaths were connected to the products supplied by Kenneth Law.
Tom Parfit was just 22 years old when he took his own life, having been sold a lethal chemical substance.
Every time I think about him, it makes me smile. He had a wonderful sense of humour. As his parent, I just wish I'd somehow been there with him and being able to prevent him taking this decision, because, with the right help, with the right conversations, I know he'd still be here today. But also it's quite clear to me that without what Kenneth Law did, my son would have lived longer. He made a profit of maybe £50 from Tom's death. Tom's life to him was worth £50.
Authorities in the UK say that Law was a serial offender who callously exploited vulnerable individuals, exchanging their lives for his financial gain.
Kenneth Law pleaded guilty to 14 counts of aiding suicide. Those charges relate to victims in Canada, but investigators have connected him to 79 people who died here.
Families of his victims have been told that their loved ones will be recognised and accounted for in his sentence. Their names will be attached to the indictment and read out in court. But some of those families want to see justice here in the UK. They want to see Kenneth Law extradited, prosecuted domestically, and they're also calling for a public inquiry.
I do want him to face charges to do with my son's death. I want him to know who he killed. I want him to understand that he took away a young, promising life. I want my day in court where he has to answer for what he did to my son.
But the concern among investigators is that any extradition could take a long time and could actually be blocked altogether because he's already been convicted of similar offences in another country.
The substance that was sold is available for legitimate purposes in appropriate strengths and quantities here in the UK.
But authorities say the way it was sold by Kenneth Law has no reasonable explanation, and instead he sold it with the knowledge that it would be used to commit suicide.
And just a reminder that if you've been affected by this story or need support, you can contact the Samaritans on 116 123 or visit samaritans.org. This story provides no closure for the families in the UK. We heard them there saying, you know, they're not going to have their day in court. Kenneth Law will never know how his actions impacted their families in this country.
Well, no, although obviously we don't know the exact details of what they're doing, but we have been told, or we heard there, that their names will be attached to the Canadian indictment, right? And therefore, as well, be considered during sentencing. And if I were the Canadian authorities, I would certainly invite those families out there, because this man is going to be in court, and I don't think that there would be any harm there in having the full gallery of the people that he's injured and hurt there when he is sentenced. The fascinating thing about this story, I suppose, is that we recognise this to have been an absolutely horrible predatory act perpetrated on vulnerable people. And yet we spent a decent chunk of last year debating introducing something very similar into the NHS through the assisted dying regime, right? Which was, again, people who feel vulnerable, who feel despair, would have been facilitated to take their own life. And this is a private sector version of what that was, right? That's how he, if he were an ideologue, I don't know anything about this man, could say that he was facilitating a legitimate choice by people who wanted to end their own lives. And I think that it is important that here we recognise that that's complete nonsense, that these were people with their lives ahead of them who were in very difficult circumstances and couldn't see a way out and who needed help, and who instead found this monster who helped them to kill themselves. And I think that it's important that we maintain that perspective the next time that we're asked to maybe play around with the lines about assisted suicide elsewhere in the state.
Do you think we can draw a parallel with assisted dying?
Not holding an angle on assisted dying one way or the other, but I think the people that were supportive of that act would say that they would want legislation in which there were loads of checks and balances and doctors signing things off, so that people like Kenneth Law are not able to do this with all these vulnerable people. Because as we saw there, if he's sending 330 packages to 286 individuals and 79 have died, one would assume that within those 207 or so who did not die, that some of them changed their mind. And it is entirely possible to want to do something and then change your mind afterwards. The people who are supportive of the bill would want to have one where you are able to have some checks and balances in there. But the whole thing is horrific, and there isn't really a good way of having the reason that legislation failed is because there isn't a good, clean way of drawing a line where this is safe and acceptable for the state to do, and this is where pressure and coercion come in. It's such a horrible area. This is why it's always failed. But can I just say, I think it's fantastic for Canada that they're adding offences that they haven't investigated, but from another state to an indictment in their own state, doing the work of humanity in that case. What a fantastic place Canada is. Well done, Canada.
And I think your suggestion that, you know, perhaps the families be invited, the families in this country, to attend
Yeah, why can't he face effectively a combined prosecution, basically, because I think he is under Canadian law for the crime of shipping the deadly substances, right?
So, yeah, but I think it's the extradition. You can't extradite them for something they've already kind of been convicted for.
Yeah. But as long as it's accounted for in the sentence, which they've said they'll do, then he will at least serve the time that he should.
That's the double jeopardy law, that he can't be retried here, and the extradition wouldn't work.
I think we abolished double jeopardy, but Canada might still have it.
We can take a break now after this very, very distressing, actually, story. It's quite distressing. We'll take another look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers when we come back. Do stay with us.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Well, the Mirror goes with a headline, a threat to all of us after a stray Russian drone flew into flats in Romania. The FT focuses on the potential deal between the US and Iran after President Trump said he was making a final determination on an agreement. The Telegraph says Donald Trump has announced he'll lift the blockade on Iranian shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. The Front of the Eye reports on polling suggesting a Labour Party led by Andy Burnham at the next general election would still struggle to beat reform. The Front of the Times says poor sleep is linked to a rise in women's cancer cases. The Guardian reports that millions of women with breast cancer could be spared chemotherapy thanks to the development of a new test. The Daily Mail leads with anger over prosecutors not seeking a second retrial for two men accused of attacking a police officer at Manchester Airport. The Express reports on the prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, a Christian B. And The Star features the helicopter pilot who airlifted seven-time Formula One champion Michael Schumacher after his horrific ski crash. So let's start with the FT front page. Trump makes truce demands. Donald Trump said he was making a final determination on an agreement with Iran to extend a fragile ceasefire and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Henry, take us into this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a final determination. Is it the final determination? Maybe not. Is it the final determination?
It does feel like we have been here before, several times.
Several times. It's a bit like which one of the 14 wars that he took credit for ending. It's very difficult with Donald Trump to... He's funny and absurd, and so the temptation is to laugh, and then you remember that he controls the world's largest military and nuclear arsenal, and you die a little inside. So here, essentially, the question is, he is essentially linking the end of the war to his stated objective, which was ending the Iranian nuclear program. The Iranian government is not unreasonably saying, you haven't managed to make us give this up yet. You know, you bombed us and we're still here and now you're negotiating, so why on earth would we give this up to you now? And so I think, to the extent that you always have to be careful when you're prognosticating about Trump, that basically there's no way out currently for Trump. The war is very bad for him. His voters hate it. They didn't vote for an interventionist president anyway. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz is creating incredibly dangerous economic conditions for him by pushing up global prices. At the same time, not only would withdrawal without a concession on the Iranian nuclear program be an enormous personal humiliation for Donald Trump, and he cares about that a lot, but he'll also have used the biggest weapon in the non-proliferation arsenal, right, which was always the threat of American intervention. If America can invade you and then lose, and you get to finish your nuclear program, that sends a message not just to Iran, but to any other country in the world that was thinking about, would I like to get hold of nuclear weapons? And that means that the net result of all of this is that Donald Trump has probably bequeathed us a much more dangerous world, whatever happens.
Susie, is this pointing to the dangerous fact that actually, to save face, he has to continue the war?
Well, what happens if he continues the war? He's already thrown everything he's got, loads of Patriot missiles at Iran, trying to get the infrastructure, the bridges, the power supplies, all that kind of stuff, and the regime's still there. Now, if the world's most developed military cannot remove a fairly analogue regime in Iran, then what's the point of it, fundamentally? If he wants to go off and have another war, it's just going to be very expensive. We're not going to get any further. I heard it described by a comedian as like trying to... winning a war from the air is like trying to load a dishwasher from the other side of the room. I mean, you might be able to say you've done it, but it's going to make a mess. And, you know, he needs this off-ramp. He can't have the war. He can't continue his own blockade. He wants the strait reopened. He can't reopen it. And he's actually gifted the Iranian regime control of about 21 miles of sea lane, which they're now apparently kings of, and no one else can possibly... have any control over. So he needs to find a way out of it. But if his only way out of it is to say they've given us control of the nuclear programme, he's not going to get that. So I think what we're going to get here is yet more Trump spinning the wheels and talking a big game, coming to some kind of a deal and a peace talk, which won't get anywhere because they will have these nuclear red lines which they just can't cross. And then we'll just have some continued kerfuffle for a while. It's not going to go away.
Do you see him just walking away? I mean, he has said that he could possibly do that on many occasions because it's not his problem anymore, that, you know, Americans don't use the Strait of Hormuz, so you guys sort it out.
I mean, he could.
We're off.
Of course he could. He could. This is Donald Trump. Of course he could do it. I just can't tell you with any great confidence interval what the likelihood of that is. Normally, the job of the commentator is to be like, well, OK, we pay attention to this more than the average person has to. Here's our informed guess about what this is. It's Donald Trump. He could do that. He could continue the war. He could do any one of half a dozen other things. None of them would be very intelligent. But, like, it just depends if he feels offended or insulted or what day of the week it is. Like,
his toilet movements were like this morning.
This is actually the weird thing, is that normally we're used to having international relations that work increasingly in a systematised, institutional way. There simply isn't all that much room, at least in the West, for your one big strongman leader to be making an enormous difference to policy. Donald Trump is very much sort of a 19th century potentate in this regard, right? Genuinely, what mood he's in matters.
Let's have a look at The Scotsman, not a paper we often come to, but a Westminster committee is to consider a probe into the embezzlement of SNP funds by Peter Murrell. Susie.
Yep, so they've got a committee in the Scottish Parliament, which most of the members, according to the Scotsman, would support an inquiry into what went wrong there. Clearly, there was a complete lack of checks and balances within the SNP. If one treasurer and one person is able to have that kind of control over the bank account and no one else was just going, can we see the receipts, please, Peter? Why have you got Le Creuset mugs and they've charged it to the party? Or a motorhome? You know, what... There was no checks and balances, this guy. He was able to do this for whatever reason he had for doing it, and he was able to get away with it. So there's going to have to be some kind of, I'd have thought, some reckoning internally, but Swinney appears to be trying to resist it. So, you know, they'll have all that fun to come, won't they?
We're going to pick up with more papers after the break, because we have run out of time for this section. Coming up next, we'll take you through all of those remaining newspapers. Do stay with us.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today.
How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on.
I'm Yalda Hakim.
You are watching The Wrap. We're still taking you through the newspapers with Henry and Susie. Let's take a look at this story, front page of The Times, in which it's saying poor sleep tied to rise in women's cancer cases. Younger women who suffer from insomnia are up to 3 times more likely to develop some types of cancer. This according to a study. Susie?
Yeah, so, I mean, on one hand, well, of course it does, because it's indicative that you are stressed, it's indicative maybe you're not having the right nutrition, it's indicative that you're not taking care of yourself, and so therefore you're going to have a rise in cancer cases, one would have thought. It's kind of possible. But also, I mean, there's a couple of other correlations here. You know, if you are someone who is more likely to have insomnia, you may be having other things going on in your life. Maybe you're drinking more caffeine. It could be something else that's actually the cause. It's just that insomnia is a correlation rather than the cause of it. But, of course, everyone should get proper, decent sleep. I mean, I have epilepsy and seizures if I don't have the right amount of sleep. I'm fully aware that insomnia is bad for the health because your body is just not being able to recharge and reset itself properly. So you have to just make sure you get a decent
How much sleep do you need?
Not enough, because it's too damn hot and the dog wants to sleep on the other pillow, which doesn't help.
Oh.
Yeah.
OK. More information than I thought we'd get about your sleeping arrangements. So the team, they believe that insomnia may disrupt hormone levels and that leads to increased risk of cancer.
Yes, although the interesting thing is that this study did not find a correlation in men between insomnia and higher cases of male-specific hormone-connected cancers. And so it's as Susie said, this sort of study is your first step drag. Basically, you take a vast amount of data, you review it, you look for connections and correlations, which is what they've done. And then those correlations, they're not in themselves proof of anything, right? But they are what directs the research. So hopefully what comes from something like this is that now, if there is a budget for investigating, properly investigating the connection between insomnia and different types of cancer, especially in women, then it can be better spent. And that's the good news that comes out of something like
The article saying that experts welcomed the study but called for caution in interpreting the results, which could be due to many factors.
They've pointed out that if you are developing cancer, you might have insomnia as a result. So, you know.
Right, let's move to Donald Trump and his influence stretching all the way to Vietnam. Farmers in northern Vietnam, who for decades buried their dead near family plantations, are digging up the graves to make way for a £1.5 billion Trump hotel and golf course.
Of course they are. He's probably more worried about this than he is the Strait of Hormuz. So he's decided he wants to put one of his awful hotels and casinos in North Vietnam. He's making everybody move Granny's body out of the way so he can build on top of it, and it's causing all kinds of ructions. But he's not going to go away, is he? This man. We've got the midterms in November, when hopefully he will lose his wafer-thin majority in Congress and become a lame duck. I nearly said sitting duck president, but also a sitting duck president. And then eventually he has to leave office because he will come to the end of his term. And, maybe he will need some WD-40 and a crowbar to get him out of the office this time, but he will definitely have to leave office one way or another. And he's still not going to go away. We're still going to have big gold buildings with Trump everywhere.
And very quickly, in the eye, he wants the law changed so he can appear on a new $250 bill.
Yeah, I mean, madness. Very briefly, the US has a law that says that no living president can appear on the money. He would need to change that. It's a very bad idea. He'll probably fail. Also, can you imagine going back and telling the North Vietnamese that they'd win the Vietnam War, but they would end up digging up their dead to build a Donald Trump hotel and casino?
Gosh.
Where you can spend $250 bills with Donald Trump's face on.
Who really won?
That takes us to the end. Thank you very much for taking us through the papers, Henry and Susie. Good to see you both. Now, after 3 seasons on Tyneside, Anthony Gordon has completed his move to Spanish giants Barcelona. Stay with us for more.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News. We located footage of the airdrop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. Now, this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references?
Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
Let's catch up on all of the sport now with Paul.
We're here at Silverstone to see if Alpine's Franco Colapinto can pick which of these 5 drivers is the real professional.
So the idea is we're going to do hot laps and then we're going to have a race.
Is it karting drivers or like...
Professional driver.
Professional driver, not karting.
No, not karting.
Can you show me their faces?
It's a mixture of ages.
Okay.
No, I can't show you their faces because you might recognise one of them.
Green flag, green flag.
Vamos!
Does it go wet or is slicks?
I think they're
slicks.
I think
Oh
they're
my god.
Right.
Slicks in the wet. That's proper English, huh?
That's how we do it at Silverstone.
Actually, really good lines, eh? It's quite tricky with the slicks on the wet or what?
So what do we think of him or her?
Oh, we got girls?
Yes, we have girls.
Okay, we got that mix. Hit the curve? No curve. Oh, a bit wide. Hit the curve, come on.
I mean, actually, I don't think you need this right now. You can just talk.
No, this is quite cool, eh?
I got
Oh, a bit of oversteer. Okay. The Alpine is better than that. Oh, sliding.
Right, so what do we make of this one so far? Driver number 1, what do we think?
Nah, he's not a pro. The pro would be like this on the straight. I would.
What do we make of the second?
Oh, this guy. He tuck in, eh?
Oh, okay.
You see, he did what the coach said. He's got some nice boots.
Yeah?
The boots are they given by the track? No?
Yeah.
They are personal.
Yeah. Well, that could be a giveaway, couldn't it?
Police. Police. Oh, the body! He's gonna fall off the cart.
Using his
He's using all the
physical
track.
ballast.
He's using the outside of the track.
Okay.
It's very slippery in the rubber.
So
Good, I like him.
potentially the pro.
Look! Okay, vamos!
Oh.
He has extra time.
It was a bit of peacocking then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A little bit of showboating.
No, he loves it.
Yeah.
He's probably racing in go-kart.
Yeah, okay.
They got pressure, right? They got cameras on them.
Yeah, he's got you commentating.
For them, yeah.
Whoa. What do you think?
He's really, he carried a lot of speed there.
Let's take a quick look at the weather for you now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, the historic hot spell comes to an end as temperatures drop back to normal over the weekend and wetter weather moves in from the west. For most, it's a dry and mild start to Saturday with some early fog patches. Thicker cloud will have moved into Western Ireland and northwest Scotland, bringing outbreaks of rain. Cloudy skies and spells of showery rain will move eastwards across Ireland, Northern Ireland and Scotland.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.